What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the second episode of That Dynasty Show. I am one of your hosts, Mikey and Tyler, joined for always, by Tyler Beck. Today, we have a pretty fun video. It's going to be a lot shorter than our hour and a half long mock draft that we posted the other day. And it's going to be mid-round players that are going to completely smash their ADP in startup dynasty drafts right now. So Tyler, I know you want to say hi to everyone, but go ahead, say your spiel, and then kick us off with your first player.
Yeah, hope everyone's doing well tonight. Thanks for coming out. You guys can always subscribe to the Discord so we can get some conversations going in there. We can share some ideas pretty quickly there. But my first guy is Amon-Ra St. Brown, who I've been huge on since the tail end of last season. We talked about him a little bit during our mock draft in our last video. Um, to me, the guy's a stud. I mean, he's 6 foot, 197 pounds. He demanded the football last year when there was no one else on the field. I mean, you look at TJ Hawkinson and DeAndre Swift combined together at most in a game, they're gonna get 10 targets apiece, those guys. At most, I think. I think the highest last year for DeAndre Swift and TJ Hawkinson both were like 11 targets a game. Leaves a lot of room left from Amon-Ra St. Brown. I know a lot of people are high on Jameson Williams, but I don't know. This guy is talented. He demanded the football, and I'm high on him. He received for over 900 yards in most part a 4-game stretch, 5 touchdowns. CeeDee Lamb his rookie year put up 1,100 yards, and he played every single game. He was on the field the entire year. So I'm big on Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm buying in on him. I paid a 24 first-round pick for him in our league. I'm good with that. Give me the upside for him. My second player is going to be a guy who a lot of people are low on.
Well, hold on. Before you get into your second player, let me chime in on Amon-Ra here, because I don't disagree, but I don't necessarily completely agree. And I think Amon-Ra is one of those guys where he's kind of already has his cult following, right? I think with Amon-Ra, there's not a lot of people that say. I don't think many people say that Amon-Ra is going to completely fall out or anything like that. I think that would be unwise to just assume that Amon-Ra is going to disappear just because Swift, Hawkinson was healthy, and they brought in Jameson Williams. My big thing with Amon-Ra is that I'm very high on Jameson Williams. I think he'll be in action by mid-October at the latest, coming off that ACL. Like you said, Hawkinson and Swift are going to combine for 10 to 15 targets a game. And then Jameson Williams is going to be commanding, I would say, at least 5 or 6 targets a game once he's there. My issue with Amon-Ra, and I think he's a fair price to pay in the middle of your dynasty startup. And what we mean by mid round is like that 7 to 12 round range. You're not spending a high end asset, but it's not exactly a total sleeper pick, right? I'm just so worried that this offense is just going to really spread it around. And I said this in the mock draft we did the other day. I'm just so high on Swift and Hawkinson and Jameson Williams. I just don't have enough room in my heart for Amon-Ra personally. But I know you're. Yeah, I was going to say, I know you're one of the guys that's been banging the table for Amon-Ra for the last, 6, 7, 8 months, however long it's been. So and that's fine. There's players to believe in. I personally think he's just going to be an average guy that's going to do fine at his ADP. I don't know if he's going to smash, but I know you feel much different on that one.
So let me ask you, how do you feel about the Detroit Lions offense next year if they end up with CJ Stroud or Bryce Young?
I love it, but my thing is, it's just that Jameson Williams is going to be the wide receiver one there. He's going to have the lion's share of the targets within the next 2 seasons. I mean, they traded up to get him. They made him a top 15 selection in this year's draft. And Detroit, I mean, you've seen the videos, I'm sure. They were going absolute apeshit in their draft room when they were able to get Jameson Williams. So I think he turns into, a weekly 7 to 9 target guy by the time he's a second-year pro. Swift is good for at least 5 targets a game, and Hawkinson's going to be good for at least 6 or 7 targets a game. So you take 8 for JMO, you take 7 for Hawkinson, you take 5 for Swift. That's 20 attempts right there for the quarterback. And that's not including, throwing it away or whatever. So my big issue is that even if they do bring in, Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, it's going to be one of those situations where maybe there's another 15 targets to go around, which theoretically Amon-Ra could still pick up 7 or 8 targets a game, especially, if he's playing out of the slot or what have you. But I don't know. It's just this has spread offense written all over it.
So one, I'm with you. 7 to 8 targets a game is totally good with me for where I'm drafting him at.
Yeah, I mean, what's his ADP now? 7th round, 8th round. I mean, that's perfectly
Yeah,
fine for a
mid
guy
set.
that you're drafting to be your wide receiver 3.
And so, but then let me also ask you: are you down on guys like T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle, Allen Robinson because they're the number 2 receiver in that offense, or are you just
No,
excited to have a good receiver in a high-powered offense? You know
no,
what I'm
but there's a big difference between Amon-Ra and those guys. Amon-Ra was a day 3 guy. All the other guys were day 2 or day 1. T. Higgins went first overall in the second round, so he was almost day 1. Jalen Waddle went round 1. Allen Robinson has been in the league for 8 years now, and he's been stellar, and he's played with shitty quarterbacks. Now he has Matt Stafford. The thing with Amon-Ra is that, he slipped in real life. I don't necessarily know if he should have fell as far as he did, but he did. So that says something in terms of what the NFL scouts were thinking. And he's undersized. He's not the guy that you're not going to expect a lot of touchdowns out of him. He's not this supremely smooth route runner. I get what you're getting at, but I feel like it's unfair to put him in the same conversation as T. Waddle and A-Rob there.
Well, no, I'm not putting him in the same conversation, of course. I mean, I'm insanely high on all 3 of those guys, but I'm saying due to their situation, are you lower on them than you would be without Tyreek Hill or Jamar Chase or Cooper Kupp in that offense?
Um, No, I don't think so. I mean, Jalen Waddle, admittedly, when Tyreek Hill got there, I did bump him down a bit, both in dynasty and redraft rankings. But T. Higgins and Allen Robinson, I think sky's the limit for them. But that's because we have Joe Burrow and we have Matt Stafford there. Whereas if in Miami, Jalen Waddle, let's say Pat Mahomes followed Tyreek Hill to Miami for some strange reason. Okay, Jalen Waddle would probably even get a bump up for me. So
Yeah,
it's a big quarterback situation. I think assuming that Detroit is going to end up with Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, one of the top quarterbacks next year, I think that's a very fair assumption. And I think that for that reason, I will never say picking Amon-Ra in that 7th to 8th round range is a bad idea. He's going to be at the very least the wide receiver 2 in Detroit for the next 2 to 4 years, right? So it's not a bad pick. It's not a bad pick. I want to show both sides of the coin, right? You're super high on him.
no, I
I'm like,
totally get it.
take him or leave it. I'm sure one of my 2 guys you'll have something to say about. So
Yeah. But I mean, I also just want to quickly add before we go on to the next guy. I know we spent a lot of time on Amon-Ra, but
hard not to.
I
He's polarizing.
yeah, right. But you look at a guy like Michael Pittman, who a lot of guys haven't been big on since his entire career. He finally produces. He's 25 years old. He's 3 years older than Amon-Ra St. Brown. His value skyrocketed this offseason for whatever reason. I don't even necessarily need him to be the best receiver for me. I just need his value to skyrocket and someone to want to pay a big price for him.
Yeah.
So
And it's and you know what the cool thing is with Amon-Ra too is that, like we said, there's a cult following on him. If he starts off the season super hot, especially when Jameson Williams is out on injury, I mean, you can use that to either leverage that and sell Amon-Ra for more than you bought him for, or just ride the wave and enjoy the points.
yeah. I mean, either way, I'm good with it. Depending on my team build, obviously. But I mean, and even if I can end up, upgrading for him and a smaller piece on my roster, or like a late, third, second round pick or whatever, I'm good. I'm good with it.
Yeah.
So, well, I do think it's risky to be trading away a 2024 first so early. And when I look back on it, I probably could have gotten it for cheaper. Um, I mean, I'm just planning on winning. I'm planning on him being my wide receiver 3 and having a late round pick that I end up feeling comfortable knowing that I paid Amon-Ra St. Brown for that pick.
Yeah, and you can't discount those last 4 or 5 game stretch that he had over the 2021 season. I mean, that was, even though he was pretty much the only person with a name on that field that was catching balls from Jared Goff, still an amazing feat. You
Yeah.
alluded to it in our mock draft. Just if a player's going to get all those targets, even if he's the only guy still in the field, there's still a degree of talent there. He still earned those targets. It wasn't necessarily a super spread out offense. If he was just another guy on that offense, he wouldn't have seen the amount of targets that he did. So, it's a good point by you.
And Jared Goff is going to remember that too.
Definitely.
He must have built some kind of relationship during that stretch. So, but now we'll move on. My second buy low pick is JuJu Smith-Schuster. The guy put up a wide receiver 1 season his second year in the league. He was wide receiver 20 his rookie year. And since then we've only seen him put up one top 24 season, but right now he is in the best situation he could possibly be in.
Yeah.
He's competing with Travis Kelce for targets, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's not that many successful teams in the league that their tight end is their wide receiver 1. If you have a stud tight end, yeah, sure, maybe you want him being your wide receiver 2, and I get it. Travis Kelce's just a nut. He's just
one of the greatest tight ends of all time, easy.
Yeah. And I think he probably takes away some of the short game from JuJu Smith-Schuster, but I also think that Travis Kelce probably runs deeper routes than JuJu most of the time.
He might, honestly.
Like,
I don't have like that. He might.
Yeah, I don't have a stat either, but when you just watch them play, when you watch JuJu when he was the most successful, he was, running slant routes, in routes, quick hitches and just getting the ball quick and getting upfield,
Yeah.
He's a really athletic guy, and he's now, if you ask me, he's the number 1 receiver. If you look at any depth chart, I mean, he is the number 1 receiver in that offense. A lot of people think Sky Moore can be the number 1 receiver in that offense. I am
skeptical
by the end of the season, I'm very skeptical of that. I mean, I like Sky Moore as a buy low guy in this rookie draft, but JuJu Smith-Schuster, I think, is the most talented receiver on that roster. And even if he ends up the number 2 receiver in that offense with Travis Kelce, if they draft a receiver next year, Travis Kelce is 32, 33. He's old. He's old. Older than that. I'm an idiot. Yeah, he's 33 now. So he's 30, 35, So I'll take the number 2 receiver in that Chiefs offense, knowing that Patrick Mahomes is there for the next, I don't know how many years it's been since he signed his contract.
He's got at least another 9 years on there.
Yeah, nine years there. So give me JuJu Smith-Schuster. I know he's on a 1-year deal, and it's a prove-it deal, but it's going to be hard not to prove yourself in that offense when there's just no talent around. So if this guy ends up getting a long-term contract some point during the season or the offseason, I mean, his value is going to skyrocket. I don't even know if I'm going to want to let him go. I mean, I'm really not selling JuJu Smith. Like, he's not a throw-in for me in a trade. I value him. I think that next year he could be worth a lot more than people are going to pay for him now. And I might even just want to hold the production on my team if my team ends up successful.
Yeah, and I don't blame you at all. I have been very far off of the JuJu train the first couple of years of his career. After that second year, and then they moved on from Antonio Brown, or Antonio Brown moved on from them. God knows how that unfolded. I was toting everyone, sell JuJu. He's not going to keep this up because he's not a true wide receiver 1. He's a support receiver, and his play with Antonio Brown proved that. And then, I don't know if that's necessarily fair to say looking back at it, because, he fought the injuries. He fought Big Ben's decline. He fought not having anyone else around him. Deontay Johnson was dropping balls left and right a couple of years ago in Pittsburgh. Like, probably wasn't JuJu's fault that he was really focused on by the defenses, especially coming off of that big second year that you mentioned. But at this point, his ADP has fallen so low, and he's in such a good situation with the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, even if he does get out-targeted by Travis Kelce, which, let's face it, he probably will. Travis Kelce,
I agree.
Travis Kelce is the longest tenured receiver for Pat Mahomes outside of McCall Hardman, but they brought in Marquez Valdes-Scantling as well. They're literally the same player, him and McCall Hardman.
Yeah, so they do the same job.
Exactly. So, Sky Moore, he's going to see volume as a rookie, but you got to remember he's still a rookie. He's not like this top 15 overall rookie. He's not, I don't want to call him just an average Joe, but I don't think he has the capability to evolve into, an offense's wide receiver 1, where JuJu most definitely can. And with the way that he plays, obviously they have Mecole and they have MVS to stretch the field. They have Travis Kelce in their red zone situations. That's what they use him for. And obviously Travis Kelce is going to see a ton of yards. but JuJu could essentially take on, like a Jarvis Landry type of role where he's just hyper targeted because he's got reliable hands. Pat Mahomes knows where he is. He's the most veteran receiver in that receiver room in terms of, just being in the NFL. So I think Pat Mahomes is going to take a liking to him, and getting JuJu because he's around the 7th or 8th round as well, right? Same as
Yeah, same tier,
yeah,
as well.
I mean, at that point, it's like, why not go for it? He very well could smash that ADP. I don't think he's gonna, put up the same stats that we saw his second year in Pittsburgh by any stretch of the imagination. But I do think that instead
I don't
of
know,
round
man.
7, I mean, you never know, but I don't see it personally. However, I do think this time next year, his ADP will be a full 2 rounds at least ahead of where it is if he does stay with Kansas City. But yeah, there's no reason to dislike Juju this year.
I
I
mean,
especially at cost.
there's just so many yards to go around that offense. He's only 25 years old too. I mean, he got in the league when he was young. He was drafted at what? I think he was 20 years old the day he was drafted, turned 21 when he
Yeah,
got in the league, right?
didn't even have a
I'm
car. Remember Juju's bike?
yeah, of course, right? And I mean, I think he's going from Ben Roethlisberger at the tail end of his career and playing with Mitchell Trubisky, and he's going to Pat Mahomes. And honestly, I hope they drafted a stud receiver because he played at his best when Antonio Brown was there, was in Pittsburgh with him. So I mean, I'm good with that. I would love if he had a strong supporting receiver and just keep that offense high powered and just let the guard. If you let the yards go around and he's the number 2 receiver in that offense, I'm good with it.
Yeah,
I'm good with taking him at that price and probably just holding the points because I'm probably not going to be happy with anything anybody offers me, and they're not going to be happy with what I'm going to want in return for him. A 26-year-old receiver who could be in what's been considered the best offense in the league because of the quarterback and because of the head coach for the last 3 years, I think.
hmm
So I'm going to hold him, and I'm going to see what happens.
yeah. I think Juju's a good pick. I personally would take him over Amon-Ra. Just I'm a hater. It's whatever. But so I'll move on to a couple of my guys here. So I also have 2, as Tyler did. And my first one, I took him in our mock draft the other day in the 10th round, which is just about where his average draft position is. I think it's around the mid 10th round, and it's Cole Kmet. Everybody looks for that next breakout tight end, and look no farther with Kmet. He's only 23 years old. Like I said, his ADP is in the 10th round, so it's not like you're spending, anything insane on him. As a second year player, he had 93 targets and somehow had 0 touchdowns, right? Like that's unheard of. And I'm not blaming him. It's just a weird circumstance. As they say in fantasy football town, he's due for positive regression, which I hate that term because regression is take a step. Why do we call it positive regression? We could just call it,
Yeah,
progression.
jumbo shrimp. You might as well call it jumbo shrimp.
Yeah, it's stupid. It's stupid, but he's due for positive regression. I mean, for what it's worth, he had 93 targets last year, 60 catches, over 600 yards. If he would have even reeled in 4 touchdowns, he would have been a top 14 tight end in PPR last year as a second year tight end. And Tyler, you mentioned this in our mock draft, the tight end stat about, first and second year tight ends finishing top 12 or whatever. Cole Kmet almost hit that threshold, and it's very elite company to be in. He's essentially acting as Chicago's wide receiver 2 this year, only behind Darnell Mooney, because I couldn't even name the other receivers on their depth chart with their exception of, rookie wide receiver Velus Jones. David Montgomery's not going to go out catch a million balls. Tariq Cohen's no longer there, and even if he was, he's pretty much out for the 2022 season. Poor guy. And then Khalil Herbert's not going to be this pass catching running back either. So I see no reason as to why Cole Kmet can't see over 100 targets this year as opposed to 93. Hell, I see no reason to believe that he'll have less than 110. In 2021, 110 targets would have been the 3rd most targets out of any tight end in the league, only behind Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce. So based off of pure volume alone, there is almost no way that Cole Kmet can finish outside of the top 10 to 12 tight ends this year. Like I said, he's only 23 years old. I'm banking on this kid. Chicago loves him. Justin Fields loves him. You're going to love him too if you draft him. There's no reason not to take him in the 10th.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I'm not going to fade your pick like you did to me right off the bat, but no, I
Wait,
agree with.
you know what? You know what? If we weren't honest with each other on this channel,
Yeah, what would we
people
have?
would sense it. People would sense it. You can't be fake, right?
Exactly, right. And so here's the thing. You're right in a lot of areas. There's not a lot of target competition. Allen Robinson's gone. Darnell Mooney is wide receiver one. Byron Pringle. I mean, while he might have 1 or 2 weeks where he ends up with a touchdown or two, just out of the blue, whatever. Like you said, he didn't have any. Cole Kmet didn't have any touchdowns with all those targets. I mean, touchdowns are kind of a random stat sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, they fluctuate year to year so big. And back to the receiver room. I mean, if you didn't like Amon-Ra St. Brown, you're definitely not liking his brother, Equanimous St. Brown. So, yeah, I'm with you. The guy's really big, really athletic. He made a drastic improvement from year one to year two. He finished, see, tight end 43 his rookie year and tight end 21 uh, the following year, this past year. So, I'm good with it. I think he's going to get a big target share in that offense. And I think he's athletic enough to do stuff with the ball after he catches it. Um, he's a tough guy, but he's an athletic guy. He's a guy who we've seen use his body to make catches at times, which has benefited him once in a while. Is bodying D backs away from the ball. But of course, I mean, you don't really want to see that out of a receiving guy. But this
Yeah.
guy's so young. He's 23 years old. He's literally my age. I mean, I just turned 23 the other day. I mean, you guys got so much room to improve, and we see tight ends that blow up like that all the time. They're in a tight end 4 or 5 range, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, maybe like tight end 3 in like a deep league where you hold those guys on your roster sometimes. And now all of a sudden he was a tight end 2 last year. So I'm good with the upside. I think Justin Fields improves as well.
I hope so.
Um, I really do. I believe in him coming out of the draft, not so much as a dynasty quarterback, like a fantasy quarterback in general.
Just as
I
a
know a
real
lot of
life
people.
kind of guy.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people blow up, say that he's got a big rushing upside, but I mean, I don't think it's anything that's like really difference making to me.
Yeah, dude, until they build him a line and get him some legitimate receivers, he's not an option. You know, if you're playing in Superflex and you need him as your QB2, like fine, whatever. He's a youth guy with the rushing upside. But
Yeah,
until they get him some fucking weapons, like you can't trust the guy.
yeah, and I mean, I think the tight end is so often just a panic button for young quarterbacks,
Yeah, exactly.
especially in an offense where there's nobody else around. Darnell Mooney is really good. He was one of my candidates that I thought about looking into, but for another reason. That's because there's no one else around. So someone's got to come out of this offense, and I think Justin Fields is really talented. Um, I just worry that the Bears have traditionally not been an air it out kind of offense.
Yeah.
But I like the bet on the player because I think he's a really good player. I think there's a good player throwing in the ball.
Yeah.
So I like it. I like it a lot. And people aren't dying to hold on to him on their rosters right now either.
Yeah, no, exactly. You can actually get him pretty cheap in leagues. Honestly, I would go as far to send, a mid to late second round pick away for him. Maybe even an early second round pick if you're in a tight end premium league. Because I mean, look, I do stat projections every single year. And granted, I've only done the first pass through. These are going to change between now and kickoff in September. But so last year, Cole Kmet's stat line, 60 catches, 612 yards, 0 touchdowns, right? Would you think it's realistic to say that he can see 68 catches, 740 yards, and just 3 touchdowns even?
Yeah, I mean, easily, clearly. I mean, with all those targets he got last year, I mean, you have to think it goes up with an offense that you hope is going to throw the ball more. Probably should throw the ball more. I don't think you buy Justin Fields in the first round of a draft if you're not planning on turning that offense around and catching up with the rest of the league that's throwing the ball all over the field. I mean, the most successful teams are the ones who are just betting and saying, we're going to throw the ball all over the place and score just more points than you. You
Yeah.
know, we're not going to worry about clock management. We're not going to try and grind it out with you. We're just going to play really fast and stop the clock a lot and score a shit ton of points. So
They're gonna
Um,
have to. They're gonna have to with that team.
yeah, I mean, otherwise the entire coaching staff is going to be gone.
Yeah.
So I'm with it. I'm with
Yeah.
it.
So yeah, if Cole Kmet ends up getting that stat line, I have him currently projected as the tight end 9. If he had that stat line in 2021, he would have finished as the tight end 12 in PPR. So projecting a tight end 1 finish for him at the age of 23. Most tight ends in the NFL never see 90 plus targets, and this guy's already seen him as a second year. So
Yeah,
get Cole Kmet. He's going to absolutely smash his ADP.
and I think 3 touchdowns honestly might be conservative for a
Very.
guy. For a guy like him in that offense that has no one around and a young quarterback at the goal line. I mean, granted they might not get to the goal line that often, but at the goal line, I could see Justin Fields looking to Cole Kmet a lot, and I could see that their offensive coordinators wanting to go to Cole Kmet a lot. I see him being one of the best matchups against the defensive sets that are going to be on the field at the goal line. So I'm totally on board with it.
Yep, completely agree. I'll go ahead and move on to my last guy here. Was hoping we were going to keep this one kind of short, but I think we're trailing into that 25, 30 minute
Yeah,
there.
we have a lot. We have a lot to say. We have a lot
We
to
do
say.
have a lot to say. Don't worry, everyone. We'll get better. We'll shorten this up a little bit for you, but it's just exciting. It's exciting to talk about these guys, especially because we only picked out 4 guys. There's a lot to say about these 4 guys because we're both passionate about the guys that we pick, right? But I'm moving on. My last guy here, Hunter Renfrow. He is his ADP right now. So for example, last year he finished as the wide receiver 10 overall in PPR. Now I know what you're thinking. Devontae Adams is there now, right? Okay, cool. Derek Carr last year set career highs in attempts and yards or whatever. Okay, cool. Why do we think that's not going to continue, right? We know that Hunter Renfrow is clearly capable of bringing in 100 catches. He had just over 120 targets last year and caught just over 100 balls. Like, dude doesn't drop anything. We know he can handle the big workload. He will never, ever, ever, ever have top coverage because Devontae Adams is on the field, and he's always going to be the defense's 3rd priority in the red zone, right? They're putting their top guy on Devontae, and then they're going to put their second best guy, especially the inside guy, on Darren Waller. Hunter Renfrow is a smooth as hell route runner. He is arguably a top 5 route runner out of any wide receiver in the NFL. If you don't believe me, go watch highlights of him running his routes. Like it's insane what he does. So he does have the touchdown upside there. Do I think he's going to see 100 catches behind Devontae Adams? No, I don't think he's going to see 100 catches, but he has all the capabilities to be an 80 plus catch guy. He can still hit 1,000 yards or at least close to it. He's still going to see 5 or more touchdowns on the year. His current ADP, after him finishing as the wide receiver 10 over at only 26 years old, and he just signed a contract extension, he is the 42nd wide receiver being drafted in sleeper drafts as of right now. That just makes absolutely no sense for me, right? So my early projection for him is 86 catches for 950 yards and 8 touchdowns, because I think we saw Derek Carr have, kind of a career year last year. Imagine what he's going to do with Devontae Adams and this huge open offense in front of him. I think Derek Carr is going to be an absolute smash. We drafted him in the top 5 of our mock draft, so I wasn't going to include him on here, or else I would have included him on here. But yeah, dude, Hunter Renfrow, only 26 years old, never seeing top coverage, smooth as all hell, supreme talent, wide receiver 2, a weekly wide receiver 2 with big upside, and you're getting him at the 42nd overall wide receiver off the board. Like, I don't know how anyone can have anything to hate on Hunter Renfrow at that price. Like, that's an insane price for a guy that just finished as a top 10 wide receiver, despite Devontae Adams showing up.
Yeah, nothing to hate about the pick at that price at all. I worry because obviously Devontae Adams just eats targets up like nobody else in the
Yeah.
NFL right now. I worry because I don't know how high powered that offense is. Um, I'm pretty big on Josh Jacobs. I think that they they are a running offense, the Raiders. They run the ball a lot. I See, I don't know.
See,
So are you taking him over?
but before last year, that was true. Last year, they were, I think, top 5 or top 8 around there in passing attempts. I mean, they let Derek Carr throw this thing 626 times last year. He had, what did he have? He had only 23 touchdowns, right? That's going up if he's throwing the ball 626 times, especially if he's got Devontae Adams and a healthy Darren Waller. And he had 4,800 yards this year. I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to make this prediction right now. Derek Carr is going to be he's going to have the most passing yards in the entire league this year.
That's a big one. That's a big bomb to drop.
It is.
So,
you know what? I will say he's either going to be first or second, and Justin Herbert's going to be up there with him. That's what I'll say.
so all right, I agree. I agree in that aspect. I'm also big on Justin Herbert, but do you think that the offensive weapons could just possibly age out, and Devontae Adams just won't have a relationship with Derek Carr like he had with Aaron Rodgers, and Darren Waller gets old. I mean, Hunter Renfrow's. I mean, how old? He's 26.
He's
He'll be.
26, so he hasn't even hit the prime age for wide receivers yet. I think that starts at 27.
Yeah, I mean, I like him as a football player, and I like him because his name value isn't anything. Nobody's attached to the name Hunter Renfrow.
Yeah.
In dynasty leagues. He's one of the most creative route runners in the league. Like you said, I mean, you watch his highlights from last year. If you just watched him on the field, I mean, he just does crazy stuff. He's like a quirky wide receiver, and he's creative and shifty, and he's tough too. And he's just an overall a really smart football player.
Mhm.
So I really do like the pick. He's got a lot of obstacles, in my eyes, but I really do. I like him at that value a lot. I mean, there's a lot of people that I like. There's a lot of players I like in this range at this value. But so let me ask you really quick. Are you
Yeah.
taking him over? Are you taking him over Allen Robinson?
Depends. I think there are situations where I would take Hunter Renfrow over Allen Robinson. There's about a 2.5 to 3 year age difference. I think Allen Robinson's only on a 1-year deal in LA, right? If I remember correctly, let me look.
I couldn't tell you, to be honest.
Allen Robinson.
I would assume so. That's kind of how LA has done deals.
Oh, 3 years. So he's there for 3 years. That changes things a little bit. I'd probably go with Allen Robinson, just because I mean, I have when I was writing fantasy articles instead of doing YouTube videos, go back a year and a half in time or 2 years in time. I was calling Allen Robinson a top 5 asset to own. And then he went out and he was like wide receiver 7 or something like that year. And then obviously last year was a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
But I think last year was just an off year for Allen Robinson. I think he's supremely talented, and we're finally going to see what he can do with a real quarterback. So that's a very close one for me. I have them projected incredibly similar in this year's stat projections. I actually have the only difference between those two is about 10 points for the entire 17-week season. So I'm probably going Allen Robinson for the upside there, I would say.
How about you're probably gonna say no to Jahan Dotson? How about
What is your fixation with Jahan Dotson? You were asking me about him the other day. I really he's going to be okay. I don't think he's going to be anything stellar.
I mean, I just think it means something that Washington went up to at 16 and drafted a receiver at 16, and everyone is just assuming that their pre-draft analysis is correct and that Washington's millions of dollars they spent in research on this draft is doo-doo. And I'm willing to take a shot on it in a lot of spots. But so let me ask one that's maybe a little more close for you. How about Brandon Cooks? I know you like Brandon Cooks.
I do like Brandon Cooks. I like Brandon Cooks a lot. With this one, damn man, that is really close to me because I think Brandon Cooks has more upside, especially being in Houston. He's got no one around him. but there is the issue of the quarterback. I mean, Brandon Cooks was an extremely serviceable option last year with Davis Mills. I do think Davis Mills is going to take a bit of a step this year. I mean, I'm rooting for the guy at least, right? I don't know if he's the answer in Houston, but I think he could be. I'm rooting for him. Um, that's a really close one. That's honestly another really close one, and I hate that you asked that. Gun to my head, if I have to, probably going with Brandon Cooks.
And last one, Hunter Renfrow or Darnell Mooney.
I'm going with Hunter Renfrow there.
Yeah.
Easy. Yeah, and here's my reason. I think Darnell Mooney's going to have a big year. I think he's going to have a really, really big year because there's no one else in that Chicago offense. My thing with Darnell Mooney, though, is that he did kind of come out of nowhere. And I will say, even before he was, essentially the lone receiver there, he showed spurts, right? He's a good route runner. He's a great, great vertical threat. But my thing with him, he's far from cemented as the wide receiver one on this offense. I mean, Chicago, it's no secret that Chicago needs to address their wide receiver room. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised to see them go out next year, take a receiver in the first round. That 2023 class has fucking good receivers in it. And Chicago's going to have an early enough pick to, pick one of those difference makers. So I think Darnell Mooney is going to slot into the wide receiver 2 role in Chicago as soon as next year. And I wouldn't even be surprised if Chicago went out and spent some money in free agency on a wide receiver next year, especially because, they want Justin Fields to be the guy. They're going to see very quickly this year that they should have gotten him a better receiver room. And this is less of a knock on Darnell Mooney and more of a knock on Chicago just sucking ass at managing their wide receiver room right now. I think it's going to get real crowded real quick there. And, Darnell Mooney, whether he's proved it or not, and I think he has proved it, but they're not heavily invested in him, right? They're using him as their wide receiver 1 this year, but if I remember correctly, he was a 5th round pick, a 6th round pick, and just I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what that means for his stock long term. So I think as players in 2022, if this is a redraft question, it becomes a lot more difficult for me because I have them projected basically right next to each other. But if it's dynasty, I have more faith in Renfrow's longevity.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are excited on Mooney because
they should be. They should be.
Yeah, I mean, we see so many videos of him, just getting so wide open and overthrows all over the place, But I mean, a lot of that's relying on Justin Fields getting better too. So you need Justin Fields to get better and Darnell Mooney to actually turn out to be good, and you need them not to just totally stack up that receiver room to the point where there's no more targets to go around.
Yeah, and that's my thing. I'm just a little nervous for the longevity. I think he's going to have a really good year, but I think Mooney's going to be one of those guys where maybe midway through the season, depending on the status of my team or whatever, I'm probably going to be calling him a sell high at some point in the next 6 months because I think he's going to have a really good year. I just don't have faith that he'll keep the stranglehold on that wide receiver 1 job in Chicago for very long.
I have one last one.
All right.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Calvin Ridley.
100 Renfrow, 1000%. I'm not going to take Calvin Ridley over any of those guys that you just mentioned because I want a receiver for 2022. Calvin Ridley's also, he's going to return and he's not going to be an Atlanta Falcon. They're going to get rid of him. They were shopping him around all offseason. I think they were trying to trade him before the suspension broke, which I mean, I guess if they did and they knew about it, scumbag move by Atlanta. But I don't think he'll return to Atlanta. That's probably a good thing, right? Because Atlanta,
yeah, that's what I was
Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder, God only knows that could be a dumpster fire for the next several years. And Kyle Pitts kind of owns that offense. I think even with a healthy Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts, I still think Kyle Pitts has a chance to out-target him because Kyle Pitts is just fucking insane. I just don't want to leave it up to chance with Calvin Ridley, right? Like, we don't even know if he's going to come back to football because, think about it. Even before his year-long suspension, he stepped away in the 2021 season because he was dealing with mental illnesses and everything like that. And I'm not knocking him on that, right? Like everyone goes through that shit. It's good that, he went out and got whatever help that he needed. But the thing is, you combine that with a suspension and an uncertainty of situation when he returns. I kind of want nothing to do with him over guys like this. Like I would completely tear him down when we're talking about, the Renfrows, the Moonies, the Robinsons of the world. So I'm
See, I have
I'm
a
not a big
different
Calvin
outlook.
Ridley guy. Just not a big Calvin Ridley guy.
I really have a different outlook because I agree with you. I don't think he's going to be in Atlanta the next time he plays football, but I think that's a great thing. I think he was.
I mean, he could be the guy that Chicago spends up this time next year,
Yeah, I mean, the guy was held down by that offense. There's no way to go around it. He was top 5 in 2020, but he
Yeah, I
was.
was about to say I would disagree with that because he was stellar in 2020.
You look at his first 2 years in the league. He was just. I think Matt Ryan just held him back. I think he could have been even better than what he put up in 2020. You look at his stat line: 90 receptions, 1,300 yards, and 9 touchdowns. I think he could improve from there. I think if
You want
you
him to
gave,
be better than that? Come on, that's unfair. That's
I think he
unfair to
could
say.
be. I think he could be 100 reception guy in the league. I think
Yeah,
if
but
he gets to the right
yeah,
spot.
but like 1,300 yards and 9 touchdowns, like there's only a handful of receivers that see those kinds of numbers every year. I mean,
No, and that's what
that's a
I
good
think.
year. That's a
I
great year.
think he could. I think he could be better than great. I think he could be a guy who puts up a wide receiver one season in the right offense at the right time. And wide receiver one, like wide receiver one overall. I think he could be a guy like Cooper Kupp who just goes to the right spot with an explosive quarterback who's just throwing the ball all over the field rather than an aging Matt Ryan. He did that with an aging Matt Ryan. Imagine if he went to one of these young guns. Imagine if he replaced, imagine if he even tagged along with an aging Stephon Diggs, or in I don't know, maybe if he went to Green Bay. Imagine if he went to Green Bay for the end of his career or something like that. These are the kind of teams that are going to be shopping for receivers when he's ready to play football again. So I'm actually big on Calvin Ridley, but I can totally understand why the uncertainty gets to you. I'm just a high risk guy, you know me.
Yeah, you are. I don't know. By the time he returns to the football field, he's going to be 28. He's only played 4 seasons, and even last season, I don't even know if you can count that. So he's essentially played under 3.5 seasons. He's going to be 28, entering a completely new situation after essentially a year and a half off of football. Like, I don't know. He's one of those guys I'm avoiding pretty much at all costs. Like, if we're talking about ADPs, like if he's sitting there, if I have my entire starting roster filled out, even my first bench wide receiver that I can use for 2022 if I'm in a startup, yeah, sure, maybe I'll take the risk on Calvin Ridley at that point. But I mean, I know we're kind of going over on this video, so I'm gonna wrap it up here. But before we do, what are you trading away for Calvin Ridley? Like ADP aside,
Oh, not much.
if you're in a league and someone puts Calvin Ridley on the block, like what's your best offer that you're giving for Calvin Ridley? Because I think this is going to be telling as to how high you actually are on him.
Not much. Not as high as I am on Amon-Ra St. Brown and JuJu. And I know. Hunter Renfrow went rounds before. He goes rounds before Calvin Ridley, of course. But I know the name value and the talent level is just absurd. But what am I paying for him? At most I'm getting like 3-4 years out of him if he comes back and plays anytime soon. So, maybe a second round pick. Yeah, I'm obviously not giving up a first round pick for him. I'm not. Honestly, a second round pick might be pricey. It's got to be like a late second round pick. I got to be sure that it's a late second round pick for me.
Yeah, I would. I mean, maybe I do like him at cost because I just checked. Oh my goodness, keep trade cut. I just checked it. He is valued at the 209 right now, and I mean, I'm not gonna lie. If I'm on the clock at 209, I guess it depends on if you're in a super flex league or not. Actually, no, it doesn't. The quarterbacks this year fucking suck. I would trade 209 or 210 for a chance with Calvin Ridley this time of the year if I don't immediately need something this year, but you're not getting anything for an immediate need at 209 or 210 anyway. The
Yeah.
issue is I don't necessarily know if anyone that has Calvin Ridley is going to say, "Oh yeah, I'll take that 210 for him." Like he's weird. Nobody wants to pay up for him. Nobody wants to ship him away for free. I guess
Yeah,
he's
I think
just
a lot of
a
these
wait and
guys.
see approach, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like who is going to take that roster spot for me otherwise? Fucking, I took Devin Duvernay in our last video. So it's like if he's just going to hold that roster spot over a guy like that, I mean, I'm good with holding him for a year, and then if he comes back and puts up wide receiver one numbers, then all of a sudden I have a guy that's valued like, I don't know, Stephon Diggs or Mike Evans, this year.
Yeah.
So
Well, we'll see. I'm sure we can make a video on Calvin Ridley one of these days. There's tons of shit to talk about with him.
yeah, but we're not really like lawyers, and we don't. Who knows about like what's gonna go on with the situation in
Yeah,
general.
it's just something to monitor. We're not going to hear his name for several months at this point. But
Yeah.
all right,
Well,
well,
you just heard about him, so that's the
there
first.
you go. We put his name out in the news again. But cool. Well, I think that's going to about do it here for us today on That Dynasty Show. Thank you guys for tuning in. Quick recap in case you skipped to the end of the video because you hate looking at me and Tyler's face. Hey, I don't blame you. We're not great looking guys. Well, Tyler is. I'm okay. But Tyler listed his guys, Amon-Ra St. Brown and JuJu. He thinks they're going to completely smash their ADP. I have Cole Kmet and Hunter Renfrow. I think these guys are definitely going to smash their ADP as well. So, if you're in those mid 7 to 12 round range of those super flex startups, you don't know who to take, you might want to look at these guys because they are going to completely smash in 2022 and beyond. So, before we wrap up, Tyler, you got any closing remarks for everyone?
No, thanks for watching. Join the Discord. See you there.
All right. See you there. We will see you on next time on That Dynasty Show.